Hey everyone, welcome to the VIBE Edu Podcast. Today I am with three of my favorite men in education, Joshua Stamper, TJ Vari, and Mitch Weathers. We are talking about what PD misses. Okay, what are we talking about today, boys? What are we talking about?
I want to know the worst PD experience that you've had. Let's kick it off with that because I think that's funny for people.
Okay, well, I was thinking about this before because I had used AI to generate these conversation starters, and I was sitting in this morning a little bit, kind of going, really, Kim, what was the worst PD experience for you? And I think for me personally, it goes back probably a decade ago when I was in the classroom, but I was a mentor teacher to a new teacher who's going through induction. And she's my favorite human in the entire world. She's my best friend. And at the time, we went to, a scheduled PD session that our district was giving. And I was like, come here, newbie. Like, let's go. We're going to get these awesome strategies around behavior because all teachers struggle with, behavior type stuff. And we sat there in a session and it was supposed to be intimate and it was supposed to be connected. And I remember kind of feeling like, okay, this is just kind of, I don't know, normal conversation. Like, give me the good stuff here. And she looked at me and she was like, you should ask them about the student that's in your classroom, Kim. And at the time in that classroom, I had a student that was undiagnosed with major ADHD. Like when you talk about that kid, he was like literally a tornado spinning around in circles. I mean, think about first graders. So think about a 6-year-old out of diapers for 3 years, you guys, right? And had a book bag filled with not books, but paper and pencils and jabbing things and all of that. And I literally was like, yeah, full blown tornado all the time. Help me with this kid. And this person, this director, this person who's giving the PD looked at me and was like, well, haven't you given them a fidget? And I said, well, of course I've tried multiple different types of fidgets. And she was like, well, this is the one that you're missing. And I was like, first of all, you don't know this kid. You've never even met this kid. Okay, fine. And she was like, it's this one right here. And it's the one, you guys, that are like the little mesh things with like the little ball that's in the middle. You know what I'm talking about? And you can like move it back and forth. And she goes, this is the only fidget. This is a fidget. And I go, what? There's something wrong with this. Like, first of all, I'm pretty sure that like, is this a safe place for us to be having conversation? No, I did not feel safe in that environment at all. And I'm pretty sure that there's different types of fidgets for kids, but that was at a time also when people weren't talking about fidgets. They weren't talking about social emotional learning. That wasn't even a buzzword yet. Like we were just talking about behavior, And I don't know, that was the worst. That was the worst PD for me. It wasn't necessarily about like the material. It was I did not feel safe or connected in that space to have conversations and to feel supported. And that was it.
My question, TJ, is it the worst PD experience you've received or been put into and had to give
Oh,
PD and you show up and you're like, wait a minute, this is where we're going to do this? I have two stories. I can speak to both, but my worst was, I don't even remember the company, but it was a large education firm company that I don't even remember what the topic was on, but the trainer was so disconnected from the content, and I was chair of my department at the time, and we were doing breakout PD on this topic departmentally. And so I had one of my assistant principals, myself as kind of the leadership, and then my whole team there. And this like 14-year-old came in to give the PD or something. It was like, do you have any classroom experience? Do you have, and I'm not saying anything about, you got to be in the class 20 years before you can lead PD. I'm not saying that, but clearly had no like personal experience to draw from at all and didn't really know what he was supposed to be teaching us. And our assistant principal and half of the department just stood up and walked out. Like halfway through, it was that bad where we were like, this is such a waste of our time. Like professionally, this is Like, and I was kind of like, okay, I guess this is over. And we just shut it down. That was it. And went back to, everybody, I think, went back to their classrooms. So, but in terms of giving PD, this is even worse, I think. District contract, I show up and I'm not going to mention the district, but it's here in California in the Bay Area, and it's a large district. And there's three high schools that are going to pilot organized binder, right? And I was going to one of the schools thinking I'm meeting with the staff who's participating as pilot. It'll probably be 10 or 20 teachers in a classroom. It's going to be very practical, hands-on, kind of the way I like to roll. And I show up and they have all staff from all three high schools packed not into like a gym with like bleachers, but like the cafeteria almost, like all in fold out metal chairs, right? And I think it was an overhead projector. And this was not back in the day when like you still had an overhead. I can't even remember. Maybe it wasn't. But the only setup in terms of like audio visual was a mic stand and a microphone in this like cavernous cafeteria with how many people would be at a large, I mean, what, 500 people in this space? And I couldn't see anybody except for like the first few rows because we were all kind of on the same level. And I'm doing my best to get through this thing. And I think they, of course, gave me like an hour, not enough time, no breakouts, nothing. And in the end, already that was horrible. A week later, so it must have not been an overhead projector because oftentimes when I'm working with teachers, I want to show them like real classroom footage. Like this is
Yeah.
what it can look like. Like, you know what I mean? For clarity's sake. So I do that. I show them this one video and I get a letter from the uh, California Teaching Credential Commission, whatever. I forget what that is. Full, like official letter, hand signed, saying that a complaint has been submitted to us against you for exploiting children for the sake of your company, and your credential is under investigation, and you have X number of weeks to provide all of this material, including finding those kids. And the video was like, I mean, they were like, half of them were probably married by then. It was like, and thank goodness for social media because I was able to track these kids down and have them write letters and everything. It was horrible. So I have kind of both sides.
Damn.
I kept my credential, by the way.
All right,
That's a
TJ, how
lot
are you
of
going to
bad.
top that?
That's a lot of bad. That's like layers of bad after bad. I'm not going to try to top that, but I will say the worst experience I had one time as an administrator was a district pulled everybody into an auditorium that sat like 900 people to hear a big name speaker. And I was excited. I knew right away the impact was going to be low because auditorium style PD, as you all know, is not the best for learning. But I was super excited for this speaker, and a guy 2 rows in front of me literally pulled out like a paper newsletter, like so wide that that it was like blocking my view of the speaker during the presentation. And what angered me the most was not necessarily the newspaper. And I was an administrator, but I didn't supervise this person. In fact, I didn't know who the person was that nobody told him to put it away.
Mm.
Like, can we just manage
Yeah.
ourselves and others as leaders? And here's a guy who clears like sending a message. I'm not paying attention to this, and there's nothing you can do about it. And from then on, I was like, man, professional learning has to be better than this. Like, we have to
Yeah,
like commit to the people, and the people have to commit to it.
for sure.
Yeah,
Amen.
there's got to be some decorum, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what has already been said. The whole sage on the stage is probably what came to mind, but the speaker that we had was obviously not a part of the educational community. I was speaking with a lot of examples, but the thing that was the worst, was that they were sweating so profusely that I thought they were going to have a heart attack on the stage. And I was more concerned for their health than the content that was actually being provided. But the main thing at the end, that, and I was an administrator at the time, that my teachers were saying, like, why did the district spend so much money on this? Why did we have to do this? Yes, they found a little bit of value and maybe a little excitement, but at the end, it was more about theory and not about like actual things that they can implement into the classroom. And that was so often the frustration from PD was like, it's not that we disagree with it. It's just when we got done with it, it just seemed hollow. Like there wasn't anything that gave us, something that we could implement right away or a strategy that we didn't have before. It was just like this hierarching concept that, sure, it makes a little bit of sense, but at the end, even if I have a little bit of excitement, how long does that really last? Maybe a day, 2 days, maybe a week, and then after that, what was the value of that professional development? And I think that was the biggest question from everyone, specifically from that one. But I mean, I can think of many others where that was the feedback from those who participated in the PD was just like, well, what did we really get out of all that?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, that's why I did create VIBE EDU and why it says, like on the invitation for everyone invited, it says, arrive with intention and leave with action, right? Your teachers, they want action, but so do your superintendents and your directors of education, your principals. Like everybody needs to have some sort of action that they can take and put into practice immediately. I mean, you guys know me. I work with teachers on the daily. I am surrounded in their world and I am a teacher for teachers, right? I support them and run alongside them. And I noticed recently, at a school district, they had this PD for teachers, and it was for all centered around math because a new math curriculum is, being rolled out for next school year. And these teachers, these TK through second grade teachers, were made to turn and talk as if they were kindergartners and talk about the strategy on how they can add like 7 plus 8 or whatever it was. And they had to turn and talk and literally act as if they were their students. And one of the teachers that I'm super, super close with walked out afterwards, messaged me, and was like, never again. Like I felt so demoralized, dehumanized. It felt so yucky. And I mean, then I asked, well, are you going to go tomorrow? Because you got to go for part two. And what was the response? The response was, well, I'm getting paid, so I got to
Mhm.
go. But like, seriously, is that why we're doing this? Is that why there is professional learnings? Like, it's one more thing I've got to do. I mean, it's got to be valuable, and you got to make your people feel like, they actually are being taken care of and supported and have action steps, not made to feel like, I don't know, silly.
Mhm.
I think we should spend time with people because of that, Kim. I think we should spend time with people talking about what their professional learning philosophy is.
Mm.
Like even listeners from this show, whether you're a teacher positioning yourself as a learner or you're a provider, district, curriculum director, or, AP, like what's the philosophy that we have about providing and receiving PD? So for example, a lot of on both sides, a lot of the problem is the PD provider or the one who says, I've got these PD days and now I've got to fill them. What am I going to do? And it's then just I'm doing something to people or hopefully for people. And I don't know if that's the right angle. And then the second thing is, as a teacher, lots of times the approach is, well, what's the PD provider going to like, whether it's a school or district, what is the PD provider going to provide for me? And I don't think that's the right angle either. Like I always thought as a teacher, I own my own professional learning. The district doesn't own it. I'm going to do what they say and I'm going to participate, but I own it. So I don't care how bad this PD is today. I'm coming away with something. And if
Mhm.
halfway through the day it's that bad that I don't think I'm going to get anything, I'm going to hide a book under the desk and read while I'm here because I'm going to sure as heck learn something today because that's what's supposed to happen. And I just think that it's kind of an approach, like what's your philosophy? And so if you come away from this show, write it down. What's your philosophical belief about providing or receiving professional learning?
Mm.
And that's a culture
Yeah.
conversation, I think, TJ, more than anything, right? When if all teachers show up with intention, all people to any type of professional learning, then to your point, even if I need to have a book in arm and we just kind of swung and missed on this one, okay, but it doesn't mean that all PD is bad. And I also any leaders that are listening, the whole if it's possible to, I'm in favor of paying teachers to engage outside of contractual hours and be in PD. You know, it um can't all be charity. So not always possible, but I'm in
Yeah, but
favor.
we also need to think about what, as leaders, specifically, like what are we providing to our staff? I mean, I just saw a gift just this morning of like senior citizens at the casino hitting the button, for their slots and saying, this is teachers going through their compliance trainings at the beginning of the school year, and I laugh because it's true. I mean, you push
Mm.
to get to the end to take the quiz that you've taken 10 years in a row
Yep.
and just go through the same, blood pathogen compliance training that everyone does across the country. And then, so like, if that's the construct of what is perceived as PD, then it is just a part of the job, or it's just one more thing I have to check because it doesn't really have any value for me because I've had to do this so many other times. So, like, I think there are things that are in the system that actually is a detriment to professional development and how it's viewed and maintained, the philosophical idea similar to what TJ is talking about.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I was just thinking about how so many educators just say, I'm a lifelong learner, right? But put your money where your mouth is. Like, are you really a lifelong learner? Then you need to be curious and open and be ready to take some sort of action. Because a lot of people, just like you said, like, just give it to me, right? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be like this bystander and just like, it's just going to, I don't know, infuse in me. Where it's actually like, you got to put this into action. You need to do the work in order to reap the benefits. Like I was thinking of you, Mitch, this morning with organized binder. You can listen. I could sit there and listen to you, but like that isn't going to change my classroom until I get in there and start doing the work. And the consistency piece with all of it too has to happen. I mean, that's how we create lifelong learners.
Mhm.
And
And it,
doers, like implementation plans, like what's the PD implementation plan post professional learning session? So,
Hmm.
like, I always tell school leaders who I'm coaching, when you do PD or you have a PD day, after that, it's a race. And you're racing to get in every classroom to determine whether or not the teachers are able to do what we train them to do and what other supports are necessary. And I want to see the change when I get there. And if you're not there fast enough in the next, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, that thing's not going to get implemented.
Right. Right. I mean, you know what we stopped doing? I had principals reaching out all the time saying, "Okay, Kim, we just need like a little booster shot. Like come out and I have like a chunk of money. I got this grant. I need you and your team to come out, give us a booster shot and then we'll be good. My teachers will be good. We've got this." And every time I'm like, that's not how this works. They need to be supported in the work after I leave. And if you don't have that plan, and by the way, as an administrator, you're a party of one. There's no way you can get in there and support them. That's why I'm there. That's why I have mentor teachers that can continue the support because otherwise, like you said, it is a race. And if there's no plan for implementation afterward to continue that, no consistency, then it was for naught.
that's
Well, and
why
I think that's why a lot of initiatives die because
Yeah.
it's one of those things, right? At the beginning of the school year, you do a kickoff, you talk about the initiatives from your district, from the state, maybe it's a personal, a leadership team, and then there's no commitment beyond that. And I think TJ, you make a great idea there too, as far as like or point that, a lot of times just the busyness of the school year, maybe with teachers, administrators, who leadership team, whatnot, that if it falls to the wayside as things are going through the school year, and then we never touch it again. I mean, think about like even teacher and administrative goals that you've constructed at the beginning of the year, and then April comes up and you're like, holy crap, I haven't done anything with that yet. And then you're scrambling to get all of the evidence ready and submit it into the system, where it's like, well, where's the impact of that? And were you truly passionate about it? Did you do any work? Did it enhance you as an educator moving on, beyond, like as far as the system goes? And as far as the initiatives go too, like, you do need to have a plan. What's your touch points throughout the school year? Kim, you talk about like assistants. We can't do this work alone. So who else are you leaning on in various places to help you so that that isn't what teachers already have in their idea of like, I don't need to do this because it's not gonna go beyond this kickoff event. Like we're not gonna do anything during the school year, or it's not gonna go beyond the first 3 months. We've seen this happen before. So I'm not gonna get invested because you know what? The next year we're gonna find something else shiny and new, and I'm gonna hear about it on the kickoff, and then we'll never see it again. And I think there's like this, unfortunately, this negative domino effect that if we aren't planning this out and we're not being intentional, it's not going anywhere and you're not going to see a difference. And to Mitch's point, it's not going to change the culture of the school.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think what is offered at a district convocation kickoff for the year, I'm not convinced that's the place for professional learning. Might plant seeds with a rollout plan in more intimate settings, so it might just be a keynote speaker or something inspirational, something to think about, but being intentional about what are we doing with the time we have and the set, like the reality, to roll up your sleeves and do PD district wide is that's that you missed the mark.
Usually,
Yeah.
usually that's true. Yeah, I agree. The thing that we got to ask ourselves, for school leaders listening is what do teachers need right now? What do they need most? And at the beginning of the school year, it's always time in the classroom.
Mhm.
So like
Mm.
maximizing the amount of time. I think you actually get more back from teachers if you maximize the amount of time that they get to have for classroom setup and then put together some short burst PDs, maybe like you said, plant the seed. We're going to introduce what these concepts are and we're going to infuse them throughout the year versus trying to train everybody in an entire day's setting on something
Right.
that they're expected to implement when they haven't even had time to set up their rooms and prepare for their student lists. Yeah, I think that's quite naive and something, look, as a takeaway from this show, that's something you can change as a principal or as a superintendent for sure.
I mean,
Mhm.
listen, you guys, I have a one-on-one client who pays me, who has for the past 3 years to work with her and support her in all things. So, yes, social emotional learning, those are the systems that run her classroom, right? And behavior support and everything. But we're also diving into curriculum. We're creating a scope and sequence for her reading, for writing, for math, for social studies, for science. We're creating project-based learning units of study. I mean, we are doing all of that work and she's paying out of pocket. And she's also paying extra for me to fly out and be with her before the school year starts to set up her classroom. So think about that. Like TJ, you just said, yeah, the greatest gift that we can give our teachers is to give them the gift of time. And you even have teachers who are like, I know that's not coming. And so therefore, I'm taking action. I'm doing this and I'm paying out of pocket, out of my teacher salary to feel supported. Really wrap your brain around that.
Mhm.
Well, I
That's
think Mitch said it before, but I wish there was a model that everybody could use that was like maybe for every hour of PD, there's 90 minutes of planning, or
Mm.
for every 2 hours of PD, there's 60 minutes of planning. I'm just throwing numbers out. Those could be paid or they could be built into the day. The other thing I see that we've got to change is like, and we get this request, right? We get called in as a speaker, and because our speaker fee is for a day, they're like, we want you to train these people for 6.5 straight hours.
Yeah.
Joe and I are always like, listen,
no.
we'll do 2 hours in the morning with a hefty break and 2 hours in the afternoon. And we promise that there will be takeaways and planning, but that's the max number of hours we're going to be working with people. And by the way, there's going to be lots of breaks and lots of think time and lots of planning and graphic organizers that go with it so people have strategies that they can use right away versus thinking that this stuff sinks in and then people take action. They have to know how to take action and what they're going to do afterwards, and you have to help them with that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think we
Yeah.
should talk about models of creativity too. I mean, TJ, you were talking about like having breaks of 90 minutes and whatnot and getting paid. I think, there's some districts too. I was just talking with someone, they're moving to a 4-day week. I know a lot of people that are listening don't have the power to make that. decision for their district, but they're doing that because they're literally spending a day allowing teachers to meet with each other, to plan, to get in their classroom, like you're saying, and using that as a work day. And thankfully, the community is one that's in support of this, because they see the value of it, which is huge. But I also
Mhm.
think there's other ways that we can change PD in general, because obviously the teachers are craving something. So what is it that they want? And I think, similar to that district, reaching out to the community and saying, hey, what is it that you want? I mean, it's the same as our leadership needs to be doing to our teachers, saying, how do you want PD to be provided to you? And seeing what comes back from that. Because I think there's a lot of models that haven't really been explored. And we're just going back to the once a month staff meeting that we do after school for 90 minutes, and it's the administrator getting up there and giving their spiel, and then everyone leaving. So are there any creative models that you all can think of that might be implemented?
It's more of a vision than a model, but I encourage school or district leaders that we're working with to kind of think of like a 3-year vision for the work. I think we need to move away from, we have this, set time, right? And we've deliberately like distilled our implementation training down to 2, 3. If we get 3 hours, that's awesome. And every time tell that to a school or district leader, they're like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, because even if you don't have other things to do in the 2 or 3 days you get to do stuff before the school year starts, we'll take that second half, but for teacher work time, dialogue, planning, prep, whatever, not more training, but also recognizing that you probably have other things you need to do, whatever that is. So we can do that in a 2 or 3 hour chunk if the vision is this is a long-term thing, right? And we're going to have these check-ins, we call them follow-ups throughout the school year. And let's do a session in May. Not for this school year, but for next school year, like just thinking about it differently. And of course, that's always linked to budget and
Yeah.
reality there. But yeah, that's one way I think we need to start thinking about, how we learn, how anybody learns. It's repetition, it's multiple exposures, it's trying it, talking about it, failing, trying again, like, and that just takes time. And finding the school leader that's willing to and has the power to commit time is is important. I
Yep.
won't say rare, but it makes all the difference, at least in our work.
I mean, I remember the last time we met you guys and Mitch, I was talking about the work that I do with schools and districts, and we do the same thing. I tell them straight up, it's going to be a 3-year plan. This is what you're getting into. What you had said, Mitch, to me was you got to be really vulnerable as an administrator, as a leader, to allow that work to happen, to occur within their school district and with their teachers. And I think, yes, I love the 3-year plan, but in doing this for the past 5 years with schools and school districts, and there's been overlapping with schools and districts, like they've come in, they've come out. I've also realized too, you cannot cut the cord after 3 years and say,
Oh, for
and now
sure.
we've got this. Now
Yeah.
we're good. Bye, adios. We're good. Thank you. Now we're moving on to something else. There's got to be some sort of weaning process because, especially for the work that I do, those teachers, they feel connected. They feel
Mhm.
supported. They feel loved. They feel like they've got somebody who understands them. And if you just rip that away, like immediately, they go, wait, what is happening? And it's really, really difficult for them to start a new school year going, oh God, like I'm back to where I was 3 years ago, being afraid of who was coming in my classroom instead of like, I've got this, I'm empowered, I'm ready. So I don't know.
Mhm.
Yes, a 3 year, but then also I truly believe in like a weaning process too.
You've
If
got to,
weaning at all, I mean, I think I mean, we've been working with schools well over a decade. It looks different now than it did
Right,
before.
right.
But even just like attrition and new teachers, and like when it becomes like, you guys know the core of my work is clarity, modeling, and routine. And when that becomes like culture at a school, the PD actually shifts to, yeah, we're going to do it. A crash course for all of our new teachers, but we're doing that primarily because we want them to feel invited into this school culture, the common language, it's just what we do here, and we want them to really here, like, so they don't feel isolated or excluded. So I agree with you completely. What that looks like, my point is it's longer than one day,
Yes.
longer than 1 year.
Yes.
I cut you off, TJ.
No, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I think part of that on our role, and I do this at Maya, is to ask about the vision. Because I would go, I'm with you on 3 years, I'm with you on extended, but I'd add a couple of pieces to it. One, because we're a post-secondary product, primarily, I'm telling people to do 4, and I advise on this to districts. I'm telling people to do 4, 5, and 6 year planning because we need to see what this looks like as students matriculate through the system. And then the second part of it is there's so many layers to professional learning and execution. I would also call for a coach. So when we sell a package to folks, we always offer coaching as a follow-up. Like we're going to come and do this day's training, but how many hour sessions can you afford to purchase for each of the people who are sitting in those seats as they try to implement this and they need coaching? And that's not scalable in any system I've ever worked with internally. So you need help to be able to do it. And maybe we coach coaches who then coach people. But like without consistent feedback on how to execute after the piece, it's not going to get done. And then the last thing I'll say on structure, because we've been talking a lot about the structure of a PD day, and I think that's good takeaway for people. But I would try to make the PD day as flexible as possible. Because the average day for a teacher is really rigid, and I love the 4-day work week, Josh, that's such a good idea.
Totally.
But because it's so structured and so rigid, on the PD day, if teachers are supposed to report at 7:30, don't start the PD at 7:30. Like start the PD at 8:30 or 9.
For sure.
And don't watch whether or not everybody shows up right at 7:30. Everybody's busting their hump all year long. The people that scam the system will scam it on every day of the year, not just the PD day. So you don't have to worry about that with people. They'll do the right thing most of the time. But like, let's start at 9 and let people come in. Let's have coffee. Let's do like a soft start and a soft end of the day and a little bit longer of a lunch. Man, that's such a give back. And again, all those give backs are just get return on investment. People will be more bought in. They'll be treated like they should be treated, to Kim's earlier point. They'll be treated like adults and professionals, and then they'll give back and pay attention and execute afterwards. That's again back to the philosophy. I'm trying to take that rigid day and make it as flexible as possible, and the PD day is the easiest space to do that.
Yeah, we don't have to jam pack it like some of what Mitch was saying, or maybe it was you, TJ, about like putting them down for 6 hours or 8 hours, straight. I mean, we used to do, walk and talks where we'd give them a podcast and say, just get with a partner and walk around outside, walk around the building while you listen to it. It's a 15-minute podcast, and then talk with your, partner that you're walking with afterwards and just continue that, and obviously like when they got back, they were like, I love that because one, I got to go outside. I got fresh air, didn't have fluorescent lights, but I also got to have communication with, someone that I may not know that's across the building. And I got some exercise out of that also, and so we're like hitting all these check boxes, but they still got professional development. They got good conversation. They got good relationship and connection with someone else, or a choice board, right? Like not everybody is at the same place. We talk about differentiation for our children, but we never do it for our staff. So what does that look like for an administrator, and how can we provide that for them? Or even just on rotations, and breaking it up and having, 4 different options that they all rotate through. Because, again, it's an opportunity for them to get a short chunk of information, and then they get like a 15-minute break. They get to walk around. They get to go get a coffee, go to the bathroom, something educators never get to do. So like giving them the opportunity to be adults while still getting information and finding creative ways to do that.
Okay, so as we wrap this up, you guys, I think I love, TJ, how you kept on talking about like, what's your philosophy, right? What is your professional development, professional learning philosophy? And I think when you are sitting down and really thinking about that, you have to think about what you value, right? And if you start that and you anchor it with that, like what do you truly value? Do you value connection? Do you value a safe space for your educators? Like what is it that you value? I think that will anchor your philosophy, and that's exactly where you need to start.